Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure to moderate this discussion, this online discussion entitled "Digital Art Here and Now," which is part of the Clujotronic festival taking place in Cluj these days. I want first of all to thank the organizers of the festival, Clujotronic, for this invitation. To moderate this online discussion, and of course I want to thank first of all our guests tonight. So please let me introduce them. 𝗔𝗵𝗄𝗃 from Germany is a professor of audio and interactive media technologies at the Film University Babelsberg-Konrad-Wolf. Her research interests focus on audiovisual mood representation as well as interactions with the sound through visuals. Simon Lazarus from France is a multimedia artist exploring new visual territories through the use of technology emerging to graffiti since the early 2000s. His visual grammar is expressed by drawings, sculpture, video murals, and audio-video installations. As for myself, my name is 𝗕𝗿𝗄𝗃 Avram. I'm a Romanian art historian, media theorist, and curator based in Cluj, where I teach at the Department of Cinema and Media of the 𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗃𝗍𝗄𝗃 University. So let me tell you how it works. I have a set of questions prepared for our two guests. I will read them and discuss them, and then from time to time we'll receive some questions from the public. So we'll be very happy to answer them as long as they will appear. First of all, to start this conversation, let me make a sort of general comment and then going into the problem a little bit. According to a number of artists and also to some important theorists, such as Oliver Grau, Lev Manovich, Edward Shanken, and so many others, media art remains a sort of marginal phenomenon, an affirmation, a conviction that is supported by the fact that media arts, and here I'm referring especially to the multimedia installation, interactive systems, mobile devices and application, and mobile projects, etc. So these sort of projects are rather ignored by the great museums and galleries as well as biennials. However, we should add, we encounter media art, this sort of media art in huge public presentations, and many of works are actually available one-click distance in apps, social media, and on the internet. So the question is, do you agree that media art is a special, somehow a separate universe, a sort of universe for the connoisseur? Or this difference is rather not so evident anymore? What do you think?
Well, tough question. I haven't thought about that earlier. So, Simon, if you have an answer right away, or you have an opinion about that, please feel free also to start. And I think about it.
Well, in France, many people use the term art numérique, which is digital art. So I have an opinion about this, but maybe media art, what you just told about, may be different. But for me, I don't really think we can say there is like a really digital art. I mean, when we say digital art, we think about a type of aesthetics and a type of mediums that comes like often like video mapping, 3D, augmented reality, virtual reality, this type of stuff, interactive elements. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that the techniques to define some pieces just by the techniques they use, I think it's normal that it's when something is new that people make a package with it. But in the end, for me, I have a joke. I say it's like telling that painters do like hair art because like the brushes are made with hairs. The question is not like how do you build your medium, but mostly maybe what you want to say with it. So if there is media art or digital art, for me it would be maybe when you speak about like the internet, you speak about like the process, you speak about like the place that the digital tools take in our everyday life. If it's like your theme, then maybe it's more media art than if it's just like the techniques. I don't know if it makes sense in English.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add this, when I use the term media arts, it's rather a general term, including art numérique in French, which is digital art, absolutely. But actually, I didn't want it to sound so serious or perhaps so theoretical. Actually, my question was exactly about how the practice, how new technologies influenced actually the practice and the distribution of the art, and how this I don't know, encounter of this sort of art with chance happened or not.
So I would say actually that media art is definitely different than traditional art. Probably not in terms of the process of making art. Some painter will use his tools and will produce art, and a poet will write a book or whatever and produce his art. A musician and a media artist or a creative coder will use electronics and a computer to produce some piece of art. But I think what is also related into this question is the user or the audience who experiences this art piece or the art pieces, and that's, from my point of view, from my experience, very different in these different types of scenes or communities, I would say.
Yes, I totally agree. We'll discuss a bit more about this. I just want to note the following, that not only Clujotronic, but also Ars Electronica in Linz this year, MUTEC in Montreal, then the European Arts Media Art Festival, and so on and so on. So many other festivals dedicated to this type of art. So almost all of them proposed this year a hybrid edition or a mixed edition, both in situ and online, which is extremely interesting. So do you think that this is something that it was good for the art practice and the encounter with the public? Do you think it's something that will become the norm, or how do you see this actually?
Simon, do you?
I hope it will not become the norm.
Okay.
I think once again it depends what we are talking about. Like if like for example you talk about apps, if like a smartphone is supposed to be the interactive device between you and the piece of art, then of course it's pretty suitable for this type of situations. But just to come back, you talked just a little before, if I understood well, that when you talk about Ars Electronica, MUTEC, this type of stuff, you create like kind of a category by the way people with the works, right? Is it the idea like that it's a collective experience or something like this? Is that what you were thinking about?
Well, yes and no. It includes that, but when I use the term hybrid edition, and hybrid, it's both online and in the side of the festival. And I was curious a little bit about this formula. Is this something that it's fine for artists, or is rather a weird way to work? And hence the question if it will become the norm, but you already answered this. We all hope that we'll go back to some normal times, but some normal times will be influenced by this formula of hybrid, both online and in situ, or not. That was my question. What do you expect, or what do you hope, perhaps?
Well, actually, I think that it will definitely stay hybrid. Not maybe at this to this extent, But I think the positive side is often that you can expand the audience, and that you can connect with many different people. And that wasn't, I mean, it was possible, of course, earlier, but it wasn't used as much as it is used now. And so there are, of course, new ways of presenting your art pieces, and also new ways, I think, of integrating people from all around the world into these installations or into the applications that are being developed. Which is also, by the way, one thing that I find very central to media art, if we use this term, is that actually people can interact with it much more individually sometimes compared to traditional art pieces. And so this large distance between the artist and the audience sometimes reduces, I would say, which makes media art or art with technology sometimes very appealing to people who are not so connected to making art or to this artistic process, I would say. So personally, I really appreciate this option or the possibility of using such constellations like tonight, where we can talk together over this network and be part of, or where I can participate in Clujotronic, even though I'm not there, and visit you in person.
Yes, I agree. That's quite an advantage for us all to meet this way. Absolutely. And speaking about that, I have in mind another extremely interesting aspect of not only of Clujotronic, but also of the other festivals, and not only festivals, but also other manifestations. And I'm referring to collaborative work. For example, speaking about Clujotronic, the opening was a video mapping by Simon Lazarus, plus the soundscape of a German techno artist, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, plus the poetry, the poems by a Romanian poet, Lucian Blaga. Putting together different artists at work, coming from different countries with different backgrounds, resulted, I think, not only into a sort of speculative, a pretended so-called quote-unquote relational aesthetics, yeah, but as a real hands-on co-production, which is extremely interesting. And I would start with, because I mentioned his work, I would start with Simon and asking, so what are your experiences with the collaboration projects and artworks, and tell us a little bit about how you develop these collaboration for this opening, for this piece, the opening of Clujotronic.
Yes, so one of the main requests was to create a collaborative piece between French and German artists. So I had to first look for a German artist. My idea first was to work with a musician, because it's a lot harder, I think, to do a visual collaboration with someone you don't know in a short time. And so it was pretty easy when I found her. I would just send her some video, and she would send me some music. And I really like when the work builds like this, because it's really like every little part influence each other, and then you get really something that's merged together, which is different than just like finishing a mapping and sending it to some musician who's gonna put something on top and just sync the sound with the visuals. So for me, it was a really good experience. And as far as Lucian Blaga, I was looking for cultural references from Transylvania, because I did not knew any. I never been there yet. Maybe I will next year, I hope. And I found his poems, and I found the book in Paris, and it was strangely very modern for me, and also I felt really connected to like the main. It has a strong idea about like contemplative aspects, and kind of a like cosmic melancholia that goes all around his work. And in the hypnotic, like in the also like meditating part of the fascination of nature. I found good connection with work we experienced before. And so, yeah, it really felt good. And then we had like some people in Raluca helped us to have like some recording of a comedian reading the poems. And in the end, we included the readings inside the music to blend it all together and to do this type of three people featuring, even if one of them is not here anymore. But it was very new for me to work like this, and I'm happy with the result.
It was an excellent encounter. I can tell this. I was there. See the work. It's a very good piece of work. And one more question, and it's actually for both of you. Do you think that, speaking about this instrumentary, electronic instrumentary, technological instrumentary, do you think it's more common in the digital art community? I mean, a collaboration is more common in the digital art community than in most traditional forms of art. What do you think? Or it's easier to do this collaboration, or what do you think?
Actually, I don't think so.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I think personally, I'm, for example, a musician also, and that was never an issue to collaborate with other artists, never. So I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. But and this was the question actually precisely for you, Angela. I mean, you work in graphic application and then software development, music technologies, and so on. So you do a lot of things, but you never collaborate, or do you have the need or the feel to collaborate with others, or do you prefer to work all by yourself and do the work alone? What's your take on this?
What do you mean exactly? I mean, of course, usually I can't work on my own. In most cases, I collaborate with others on projects.
I'm referring to, for example, an artist who wants to make an interactive installation but doesn't know how to write codes, and then works with someone who writes codes. Or, on the other hand, someone who did the visuals but needs someone into sound or music to work with. And this sort of collaboration, how do you do this? How do you work, or you work mainly by yourself?
No, but that's what I meant. I actually meant that I think collaboration is not an issue. Usually you do collaborate. That was what I was talking about.
Okay.
Sorry if I put it out wrongly. That's what I meant. Usually when I'm doing music, I always collaborated with others, and also professionally. I hardly remember any time where I worked solely for a long period of time on my own. Usually there are other people who influence the work, who come on board, basically, who bring in their expertise, and especially in the installation art and creative art, coding art, I would say. This is oftentimes a collaboration between different artists who, focus on different fields, as you mentioned, sound artists, visual artists, but also in our study program, for example, physical computing artists who work with technology, hardware, and devices. And so the foci or the expertises, I would say, differ. And so in order to create something new, you have to collaborate. And it is actually a very nice question, because I would like to ask Alexandru to show my video, if you don't mind, that I brought, because it shows one of the collaborative art projects that we students to do in the second or third term, where they have to collaborate on one installation and also on one exhibition. They have to organize this and basically bring in all of their competencies for this collaborative project. And what you see, I don't know if you can hear me speak, this was an exhibition last year in Berlin, Neukölln, called Alive, with the... Yes, they can hear. Okay. Thank you for that message. So that was a group of 8 students, I think, 7 or 8 students, and they were working on different projects together, interactive installations, mostly driven by applications where they use processing, Arduino and open frameworks, for example. And they were supposed, first of all, to design the whole exhibition, to develop the different art pieces they wanted to exhibit there. And then there was also a performance at the end by 3 of the students, which is also part here of this short video. And so what I wanted to say and promote a little bit is also in our program, we actually focus on collaboration as a skill set, because especially my personal experience is that if you bring together many different types of competencies like software developer and artists, usually communication is the most important skill that is required to collaborate successfully and constructively, I would say.
That was an excellent example. I really enjoyed it, and I'm curious: is this so? You're the professor who facilitated the collaboration between students, and they work together for this piece, right?
Yeah.
And this is something recurrently. Do you do this all the time, or it was rather an exception, or how does it work in your?
Well, it's not only me; it's also my colleague, Professor 𝗕𝗍𝗃𝗃𝗃. It's the 2 of us who are basically responsible for this program, Creative Technologies. And it is a 4-term program, master's program, and in the 2nd or 3rd term, there is 1 collaborative project. So basically in each and every term, except for the last one where the students are supposed to do the master's thesis, they can work on a project, on an individual project, and once they have to work also together on a collaborative project. So this is recurring, but this was the first time because the program is not that old. We started in 2016. And yeah, so this was the first project, and this year will be slightly different because of Corona. So let's see what the collaborative project will be, but it will be different, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And this is somehow. I'm going to the next question. Is this a big difference? Of course it is, but how do you see this difference of collaborating face to face with people or collaborating over a long distance? Does this make a huge difference? Is this some, I don't know, put some problems in these collaborations? How do you see that as artists, as makers, art makers?
Well, I think it is a challenge, definitely. I personally, as I already said, I somehow, or mostly I also do embrace it because I really made a lot of new connections over the world. And I appreciate that. And also I find it very interesting, this new kind of communication. But on the other hand, I would say it is really tiring. And also in particular, when you do arts, music or graphics or media arts or coding, whatever, this personal communication and the personal exchange is something which is really important, I would say. So this complete lockdown is really a period of time that I don't want to relive once again. A hybrid version, I think, would work well, has its positive effects, but yeah, in particular, if you talk about emotional stuff and so, which is always, from my point of view, also part of an artistic work process, then it makes sense. It is really helpful to see each other in one room and not over a distance.
I understand, totally understand. Simon, what about you? How do you feel about collaborating at a distance? Is this okay with you, or?
Well, I feel a little bit like Angela. Of course, I think it's easier to work when you are in presence of the person, and also it may be easier to find like pieces of time to share together instead of like doing Skypes and stuff like this. And of course, I mean, we can exchange information through this type of process, but you cannot really, like, I don't know, feel the people. Some parts of like what you share, it doesn't go through the webcam, I think. And that was the funny thing a little bit when I collaborate with 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, because we closely work together, but I still don't feel like I know her, even if I know her work. And so I'm really curious about meeting her one day, I think.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I think that this very conversation we have right now, it would have been better to have it together in Cluj within the framework of Clujotronic in person. But yeah, that's the times we live. So so in a way or another, you anticipated my next set of questions, which regards the pandemics and the lockdown. But first of all, something related to the collaboration until we go into the other topic. Did you take advantage of this COVID-19 pandemic to try to extend collaborations, or on the contrary, you turned down any initiatives regarding this collaboration? How did it work these days, this recent period? You extended it, or you, on the contrary?
For me, it's no. I don't. I mean, the main stuff that COVID changed for me is that the period of lockdown, of course, when you're an artist, first, especially at the beginning, when everything got cancelled, you got a lot of free time. So, I mean, it was, for me, it was the occasion to try to do some stuff I never take the time to do, to have creative process that can be very, very long for like a short result. So it was kind of a forced residency, which was not so bad. And then regarding collaboration, it really depends on the projects. I mean, I got pretty lucky. Like most of the big stuff I was working for weren't cancelled; they were just moved forward. So it didn't change so much the rhythm of my work. But some of my friends who do more performance work, they got lots of stuff, of course, cancelled. And I think for some artists, it can be really hard.
Okay. And Angela, how the pandemics affected your work? And I'm referring both at the level of individual practice, sorry, and at the level of potential encounters across countries and mediums. So how this affected your work?
Actually, it totally changed my artistic work, and that I didn't do much because there was a lot of work to be done in the university because everything needed to change, and so that was basically the main focus, to get the lectures done on a digital level, that they could be held over the internet, and all of the organizational stuff was quite a lot of work and a lot of change in that sense, to convey the information and transfer all of this stuff. And so I didn't have much time, and I didn't expand any connections. Unfortunately, any artistic connection. Now, in the last couple of months, this changed again, luckily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a question regarding the internet and the use of the internet. We've all seen in this recent period of time, that internet was used in sort of two different manners. On the one hand, it represented a sort of medium, a sort of platform, a means of distribution of the artwork, such as, let's say, broadcasting a theater performance on a stage, right, without the public, but it was broadcast on the internet. But on the other hand, there were artists who took internet as a means of production, as a medium of artistic expression per se. And not once again, as a simple intermediary. So what do you think about these two approaches? Is this a way to address better the situation with internet? And how do you see this approach to using internet?
As an art tool, or as a medium to promote your art? You mean both ends?
So you basically use both, and you consider both as a way to go.
I find it very interesting, actually. So far, we are not using it at all in our program. If I may refer to that once again, we basically use it as a way to promote or to publish project results. But I find it really an interesting approach also, of course, to make use of this current situation and to reach out and present your ideas using the internet not only as a means to publish and to connect and to spread the word, but actually as some kind of tool to create art. Yeah, so I think it is an interesting approach, and I'm very interested in how it will develop.
Yes, indeed, it's a whole mutation, and perhaps for you it's not so. I don't know. Can I put it that it's not such a big deal, right? You work with that. This is your way to approach art making and so on through the internet. But for a lot of people around there, especially working in traditional mediums, it was quite a mutation, and it was I was surprised to find out all sorts of approaches to the internet, which was surprising. For some people, approaching internet as a way of working, and once again, not only for distributing artworks, it was quite interesting. How was that for you, Simon?
Yes, I also agree. I agree. I think I mean, of course, you can broadcast stuff through internet, but I think if I see a theater piece on YouTube, of course, the experience will be less strong than I see it in person. But then when you begin to use internet as a tool, like a little bit a news, maybe a public space, and like use it in its core to be like the subject and the part of the piece, there is like a lot of new things to do and to think, I think, and that's pretty exciting for me.
Okay, so do you think that I don't know, you media artists, once again, instead of a different term, digital artists or whatever you prefer, so you are rather more equipped or more ready to use to adapt to this special situation that artists working in traditional mediums? What do you think? I mean, this is a better times for a media artist or for a painter. Let me put this way. What do you think?
I think it depends. Like, for example, in the beginning of the lockdown, I mean, if your computer breaks down in the beginning of the lockdown, then you cannot work at all. You're very dependent of the technology. So you're also very dependent that all the world keeps on spinning in a way. But then if everything goes, if you don't have any like technical problems, of course, you can create stuff with your laptop in your bedroom, and you don't need, like, if you're a big sculptor, you don't need to have like a huge studio. So I think, I don't know, it really depends on the situation, but the idea that a digital artist is more flexible and more resilient, I'm not so sure, because I think we're still using technology. We don't really understand how it works. We're not really able to repair it if it breaks down. So I don't really feel like it's only something that will bring you more freedom. It's like a gift and a curse in a way for me.
Yeah, that's well, you have to come to Creative Technologies then, Simon.
Yeah.
we try to teach basically both ends, arts on some way, and also the technical part, so that you actually understand what is going on in the background. But coming back to the initial question, I would say that there's no easy answer, and I would definitely agree with what Simon said already. I could imagine actually that, but this is just my imagination, and it might be very naive, that if you're working on a piece of art as a painter traditionally, and you have long times in your studio alone on your own, then you might get along through this times easier than someone who's continuously all around people. Although if you have an internet connection and you know how to use your computer, then certainly you can at least be around chat rooms and have this constant conversation. But I think there is no easy answer to your initial question. That was basically what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I totally assume that it was not an easy question, but once again, perhaps it's just I don't know, one point to think about later on. So somehow related to this thing or a parallel between, let's say, more traditional mediums and digital means? Here's is a question from the public, and I would like to address you this question. And it writes this way: is interactivity in digital artworks often just a gimmick? When is it more than that and the real integral part of the artwork? So when it is more than a gimmick and the real integral part of the artwork?
Well, I think it's also resonate with the first question you asked. Like, I mean, the first time somebody did like an interactive video mapping piece, for example, it was a kind of a performance in itself. Like, if I move this, it's gonna move this on the projection. So, but then once everybody know that this exists, I think the goal is maybe to try to find way for the interactivity to talk about other things, like not to become the main point, but to become like a process. And so I tried to do an interactive piece last year. So this is the video that's playing right now. And the idea was we found an optical way and to switch the mirrors from like a screen to a mirror by varying the quantity of light on both sides of the mirror. So in this installation, the idea was the closer you go to the image to see more details, the more the image disappears. And in the end, you're in front of your own reflection. Then you have to like walk back to see again the image. And it was a little bit the idea of when sometimes you wake up and you try to remember a dream, and the more you get closer to the dream, the more the dream disappears. And so, yeah. And so I think that's a good question, because it's the core of the stuff. Like, if it's just a gimmick, for me, it's a little bit disappointing. The idea is try maybe to blend it into like some like a question and feeling, and to make it do something that you couldn't do without this technique, actually.
Mm-hmm. The work is 2019, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Did you show the work this year, 2020? And
not yet. We showed it. We finished the prototype in a residency called 𝗕𝗍𝗄𝗏 near Poitiers in France, and we are still working on it. But I will maybe show it next year.
Okay. Okay. So, and Angela, did you have some big shows this year, or did you show your work in this year?
No, not really.
Where I'm pointing with my question, I'm pointing actually to the audience. I was curious how's the audience influenced by the special situation we're in. I mean, do you think that the audience increased via internet, or rather decreased? I mean, we're in the situation where a lot of festivals, a lot of exhibitions, a lot of residencies, performances, etc., were actually cancelled, and this affected your activity. I mean, in terms of public, especially.
Oh, actually not, because and I was also wrong saying that I didn't show anything, because I published one paper with some colleagues of mine and also students, and we published it and also presented it as at an online conference. So everything that I did, basically, which was one paper, or two actually, were presented, and that was not a big deal. I don't know about the audience, I must say, and in terms of what we did in our study program, we really had to change lots of the technical modes, and so we couldn't focus actually on presentation and on not regenerating, but regaining more people to see what our students did in the last term. But I guess now that the general organization and the general workflows are established, I think there will be new ways coming in the next term as well. And also in my personal artistic work, I will also start to make use of the newly connected collaborations via the internet, and hopefully in a more hybrid way than it was possible.
Okay. And what about you, Simon? Did you find a broader audience on the internet this period of time?
I didn't notice a strong difference, but of course, like for the few gigs that got still showed, there were less other gigs. So I think for like when the show can occur, maybe it can bring more people in to see it. Maybe it's what happened with Clujotronic. I don't know. Did you have a lot of people yesterday?
Yes, they were, but they were coming in I don't know, certain numbers. I don't know the maximum number of public, but your work was shown repeatedly at intervals of time as for a lot of people to see it. I mean, all the people to see it. So I cannot appreciate how many people were there. Perhaps several hundreds or 100. I don't know. I'm not good in appreciating how many, but anyway, the maximum allowed by the rules, by the sanitary rules, and then once again they were showing repeatedly. There's I mean, and speaking about remaining into the pandemic's problem, this is more I don't know, perhaps a more not intimate, but more personal in a way or another. Can I don't know, the special situation we've been in, the pandemics and the dramatic things we've seen on a daily basis with the people, with the sick people and so on. So this sort of situation addressed better the feelings of you put into your work. I mean, did you address more the things like loneliness, anxiety, and I don't know, dramatic reality these days? Did this affect your subjective take on your art, or?
I think so, yes. Not only on the art, but also on the basically on the whole community I'm surrounded with, the artistic one and also the academic one. It was a very difficult time, and also had a lot of impact in terms of this: how do I deal with loneliness? How can I actually work on my studies all on my own all the time? We did of course weekly sessions via Zoom with the students, for example, but everybody had to motivate themselves to work on their stuff, and there was not much exchange other than via video conference. And so I think this had a strong impact also on what came out and what people were thinking about in terms of how can we collaborate better in the future, for example. How can we I think not how can we, but I'm where I want to go is to say how that I think the consciousness of people towards each other, if that's the right translation, I think that changed, because everybody was much more conscious of how other people were feeling and how they were dealing with the situation, and that was a change that I perceived or experienced, and not only in my artistic community, but also especially in the academic world.
What about you, Simon? Did you address these things, dramatic things, anxiety, loneliness, isolation?
I got pretty lucky during the lockdown. I wasn't alone. I was in a place where with other artists work as well, because we were already in a residency there. So we just got locked in the residency. So it was pretty nice, but I didn't feel like too lonely or too I don't know, too anxious. But I think the interesting part was what Angela was saying as well, is that it brings a type of like a way of thinking about other people and people as parts of groups that were pretty interesting. Because, I mean, in French, there is a saying like, it's la liberté des uns commence là où s'arrête celle des autres. It's like freedom from someone ends where other people's freedoms begin. And for once, it wasn't true anymore. because our personal actions were involving possibilities of you know what I mean, like because of the pandemic stuff to convey viruses to other people. So it was like it really shifted something about like how I have the right to decide how I behave inside the community, and this was pretty interesting, pretty revealing, and I don't know. I think it was a good time to think about like social problematics.
Quite a lot of artists say that despite the whole bizarre reality around us, it was a good time for working and a good time for writing. And I agree with that. But speaking about, I don't know, periods of time and time flowing and so on, we will address the issue of time and of obsolescence through a question received from the public. If I may, and then we'll go towards the end of our discussion. But please let me go to the question itself. So, do digital artworks have a shorter lifespan than most traditional art? A famous painting will always stay famous, but can we say the same, for example, about projection mappings or digital installations? Nice question.
I think once again it also revolves on the first question we asked. Like if we can define media art, then we need to have like stuff that stays the same in every part of works, and that's why it's hard sometimes to make a category. But one of the things you begin to say, Angela, was like I understood it like it's not work that you could buy it, but most of the time it's not work that's made to be bought like a painting, but to be experienced. So the idea is not like to own the piece. It's ephemeral in its core, but maybe what you keep is just the memory of the moment, and I think it's something that resonates well with also these whole ideas about like maybe having less what's the name in English? Ownership of things, but use of things, like with all the changes around the sharing. You know what I mean? Instead of buying, you just use something, and I think this idea that media art is made to be experienced and not kept is a strong idea, and it's for me, if I would define it, maybe it would be one of the main elements. So I agree. It's not made to have a very long lifespan, maybe, but you can keep the memory a long time.
Yeah, I would agree with actually. Although I must also say that there are certainly, if you keep the hardware and the whole equipment setup that can play back the art piece, then it can of course also survive many years, I would say. Probably not comparable with traditional art, but I totally agree with what you said. Agree with what you said, Simon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking about the lifespan of a work of art, and somehow going back to the question regarding the audience, here's another question from our public following us online, and I think it's again another interesting question, and I'm reading it. In your experience, does digital art mostly find an audience among younger people, digital natives, so-called? Do you think that the pandemic made digital art more accessible to older generations? This is a question of generations. Who's mostly eager or open to see media arts? Is the native digital natives, the young generations? And during the pandemics, do you think that your audience expanded to include also older generations as well?
I think it depends, but for video mapping, it's really something very mainstream. It's easy to see huge colors on a building. And for example, in Fête des Lumières de Lyon, I was there last year, and the public is since also when it's in public space, it's of course more accessible. But I mean, the audience was like every age. Maybe if it's more like inside digital art festivals with more, underground scene or more sharp scene, then it's mostly younger people for what I've experienced. But I think it's more it's not because people cannot understand it. It's just that usually it goes together with a culture, a musical culture that's maybe more appealing for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years old. But it doesn't have to stay that way, I think.
Yeah, that's also my experience, actually.
Okay, so do you feel that? Of course, you're a professor, so you're all the time together with the younger generations. Do you feel that you work better with them than perhaps with other artists, adult or mature artists, or?
No, I don't think so. I think. Do you mean in terms of older artists are not so open towards new ideas, or do you mean in general?
No. Yeah, it was a sort of more nuanced questions that we received from the public regarding the generations. If the new generations are more open towards digital art or not.
I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. Maybe the difference is that the new generations are more likely to try things out versus just experiencing new art. But I don't have the impression that older generations are not willing to get in touch or to be engaged in some new ideas or new concepts. Actually, not at all. I would rather say that they are probably not so likely to try it out for their own processes or only in smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true. And the discussion somehow goes logically in a circle towards the somehow very beginning, our discussion at the very beginning. And I would like to make some final remarks and to close this discussion if you don't want to add something more. So yeah, indeed, I think it's this festival itself, Clujotronic, and not only this one, but we're in the middle of this festival, great festival. So and also our dialogue right now here give the dimension actually of the reality we're living right now. I mean, one that is profoundly dependent on technology, on the internet, on a communication on the internet, but which is also dedicated to collaborations and fruitful encounters. I mean, between different people, different countries, different mediums, and so on. And I think that's quite a good thing. Okay, so. I think it was an excellent discussion. I want to thank you very much, Angela and Simon, for participating here. I want to thank also the public who attended this dialogue, and of course, I want to thank the organizer for facilitating this encounter over the technology and over the internet. So, thank you once again.
Thank you too. Thank you especially for this great moderation, and also thank you to everyone for the invitation. It was great to meet you. Also, Simon, it was great to meet you. Hopefully we will see each other next year in real life, in person at the next festival. Would be great.
Hope so. Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you a lot. Bye.